excited, thrilled to be here with my main man, Julian. What's up, Julian?
Hello. Not much. How are you? I'm doing well. It's a good day. It's been good. Also not too busy, so that's also good.
Listen, let me tell you why today is such a glorious day while we wait for folks to come in. And remember, the first person to get a comment in, a question in, I have to answer no matter what. That is the law. I must follow it. But in the meantime, while we're waiting, let me tell you why today is so glorious. For lunch today, I had a homemade double-decker taco, just like they make at Taco Bell. The best thing that Taco Bell has ever invented. Listen, I'm a man of the people. I'm not above eating Taco Bell, okay? The best thing, though, that they've ever... look, I'm not going to lie. I'm not a huge fan of chalupa. Not a gordita guy.
Oh.
The double-decker taco is the best thing that they have ever made. And my wife and I made some homemade double-decker tacos for dinner last night. You know, you got the soft shell tortilla on the outside. You got some refried beans. You put it in across a hard shell corn tortilla. You got your fillings. Oh my gosh, heaven. So if I seem like I've got a little bit of a pep in my step today, that's why.
Interesting. I will say I'm also a big Taco Bell fan. I don't think I know about the double-decker taco.
I might be aging myself here. This is something that like probably originally was unveiled like 20 something years ago. Like this is back before I think I remember the day when Taco Bell first started selling quesadillas. You know, something as basic as quesadillas. This was like, this was revolutionary at the time, at least for Taco Bell. Anyway, The double-decker tacos preceded quesadillas. Still, to my mind, the best. God, I sound like such an old man right now. Best thing they've ever made. Anyway, I'm sure people have heard enough about me and my love of a very specific item on the Taco Bell menu. Let's get to the questions. Whatever is on your mind, travel-wise, I want to take them. And as we mentioned, the very first question we have to take no matter what. So what do we got first?
Yeah. Well, first related comment. Dina goes, okay, well, I wasn't hungry. So you've started us off real well. But first question actually comes from Allison. Hey, Allison.
Hey, what's up, Allison?
She goes, happy Inauguration Day. When do you expect to see exemptions carved out for vaccinated folks?
It's a great question. And actually, this is going to be the subject of next week's advice email, the travel advice email that I write that comes out every Monday, should be straight into your inbox. And I'm going to be writing about vaccine passports and how this will open up travel to places that are currently not available for travel for Americans, places like Europe, Australia, Japan. And what I expect is that in the next sort of, it's hard to say with exact guess about when the timeline will be, but before things go fully back to normal, like it was before, where you didn't need a visa to visit Europe or Japan, what you'll need probably in the meantime as a means of opening up those places is a vaccine passport. And what this will be is, you go and you get your vaccination, and they give you a little card saying, yes, Scott has been vaccinated. And then if I want to travel to somewhere that requires proof of vaccination, I'll probably just have to upload this proof of vaccination to an app that essentially just generates a QR code that then I can show immigration officials, and they scan it and it says, yes, Scott has been vaccinated, he's good to go and allowed in. When would I expect that, us to go from today, where basically tourism is not allowed to places like Europe, to a future where vaccine passport will allow tourists into places like Europe? I would expect by the summertime. It's a little bit of a moving target given the pace of vaccination. Is it going to be going slowly? Is it going to continue to accelerate given the pace of new infections? All these questions that are, nobody has the answers to, even the best professional. So I'm not, I can't give a prediction with certainty here. But I would be very surprised if by, say, May or June, you weren't able to take a trip to places like Tokyo or Paris.
All right. Next question. We'll just keep it going. Fernando asks a two-parter. Fernando asks, what do you think about Spirit Airlines? And then follows it up with, are Spirit Airline deals worth it?
Good question. And I think, at the end of the day, a question about Spirit Airlines, Frontier, and other budget airlines largely comes down to a personal preference thing. I have a ton of gratitude for budget airlines like Spirit Airlines, even though I rarely fly them. And the reason why I have so much gratitude for an airline that I never fly is that budget airlines are the reason why we are living in the golden age of cheap flights. The fact that Spirit Airlines sells, $29 tickets to Fort Lauderdale and $39 tickets to New York and elsewhere is the reason why Delta and American and United and Southwest has to lower their fares, because they don't want everybody to just say, well, fuck that. I'm not buying $100 flight, ticket or $200 ticket on Delta when I can get a $29 ticket on Spirit. Price is the number one factor that that guides people's purchasing decisions when it comes to tickets, which is why I'm so grateful to budget airlines, even though I rarely fly them, especially internationally. And the reason why I tend not to fly them, and I want to be clear, I'm not saying that you should never fly them. I'm not saying that other people shouldn't. I think everybody's kind of situation is different. But the reason that I don't fly them has nothing to do with the experience on board. It has nothing to do with the bag fees or things like that, which you should be well aware of. The reason why I don't is because of the route network. And what I mean by that is, unlike most airlines where they have not only partnerships, like American is partners with British Airways and Japan Airlines, and United's partners with Lufthansa and Swiss and ANA and others, Spirit Airlines doesn't have any partners. And they don't, to my knowledge, don't have any interline agreements. Interline agreements are when, let's say, a plane, like one of their planes goes down for cannot fly because of a mechanical issue, huge delay. They can't take Spirit customers, Spirit travelers, and put them on another airline the way you can be taken from, let's say, a United flight. If it gets, the plane has a mechanical issue, they can take United passengers and put them on American Airlines planes in those sorts of extenuating circumstances. And so the problem with that is, let's say you've got a Spirit Airlines flight down to Colombia. If that flight gets canceled, you might be waiting days until the next opportunity to be able to fly down there. Whereas with some of the larger airlines, not only do they have a lot more flights, a lot more ability to reaccommodate you, but they've got all those partner airlines that can also take you in a pinch if needed. And so my worry basically is, like, if things go wrong with the trip, they can go really wrong, and you might be looking at a really long delay as opposed to just a short one.
Yeah, that's one thing that you brought up, that you don't, or you mainly don't fly them, not because of the aircraft or the onboard experience. I've always found it pretty interesting that Spirit or a lot of these budget airlines actually have some of the newer planes, or their aircraft usually isn't the issue. Again, it's the route networking that you're saying.
Yeah, they have some of the newer planes, and there's some travel bloggers that swear by buying I think it's called the big front seat. This is, essentially the upgraded, basically premium economy seat in Spirit Airlines that doesn't cost very much to upgrade to, probably $50 or $100 for flight, which, is not nothing. But when you look at what it costs to upgrade on Delta or United, I mean, we're talking hundreds of dollars easily. And so there are a lot of bloggers who will swear by it, that it's actually the best deal in travel to buy a Spirit flight and then upgrade to the big front seat, where you've got, a fairly comfy, fairly spacious seat for your ride down to wherever your vacation is.
Yeah. Marietta, sorry if I'm pronouncing that wrong, asks, I have vouchers expiring soon. I won't be able to travel before they expire. Any tips to get them reissued or saved? I feel like a lot of people are kind of running into these issues.
Great question. I know a lot of folks are in this boat right now, especially, you might have gotten a voucher early on in the pandemic, which sadly, unfortunately, it's already been close to 12 months, and many of the vouchers expire 12 months. Here's what I would do if I were in your shoes. I would call up the airline, And I would explain my situation and say, look, not only am I not able to travel right now, public health experts are advising I don't take trips for, that we all try to avoid it until maybe it's a little bit safer, maybe, late spring or summertime. I might not be able to use this voucher. Can I get an extension? And so this is a situation where if you just sort of wait, let it expire, and then try to get it reactivated, it's going to be difficult. But if you instead proactively ask, call them up and ask, hey, can I get an extension? I think there's a very strong chance that they will. A lot of airlines have actually been doing this on their own. Southwest has extended a lot of vouchers. A lot of hotel chains have extended vouchers. I think there's a good chance that they'll be able to do you a solid, and they probably have it as an unwritten rule at the airline. Anybody who calls, just give them an extra 6 months. The last thing that I would note here is be sure to check what the expiration date really refers to, because on some airlines, the expiration date refers to when the trip needs to take place by. But on other airlines, the expiration date might just be when the trip needs to be booked by. So you might, if it's only when it needs to be booked by, let's say it expires March 31st, that's when you need to book a trip by. You can book a flight for this summer, this fall, whenever, do it in the next month or two, and you're able to change your dates later on without having to pay any penalty, because all the airlines have basically across the board have waived those change fees for new bookings. So make sure you read the fine print a little bit to see what the expiration date refers to.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Allison asks, what are the lowest fares you've seen from LAX to Rome and MCO to Rome for November's? I am wondering when to pull the trigger.
Oh boy. Let's see. I'm going to pull this up. I'm going to try to sneakily get it on my little handy internal calculator, but I have to stall a little bit while it loads. Okay, so the lowest price we've ever seen from LA to Rome, $239 round trip. This was a deal we found and sent back in July of 2019 that included travel for November of that year. Let's see, for Orlando to Rome, the lowest price we have ever seen on that route is $402 round trip. That was a deal we sent back in 2018. Most recently, we found that for $579. So yeah, not quite as good as LA. That's actually a great lesson for folks. Don't assume that where is that a closer on the map as the bird fly, as the crow flies, is going to be cheaper. Orlando is closer to Rome than Los Angeles is. And yet the cheapest fare from Orlando that we've ever seen is 400 something, whereas the cheapest fare we've ever seen from LA to Rome is 239. There are a ton of factors that determine why, we'll see certain fares on certain routes, many of which I detail in my upcoming book, Take More Vacations, out May 11th, available for pre-order today. And one of the things that we get into in this book is explaining how it doesn't really matter so much how short or how long you're flying. It doesn't matter even the size of the city. What the general variable that determines how often you're going to see cheap flights and how low they're going to get is just how much competition there is. LA is an airport where there's a ton of competition between airlines, and there's a little bit less for Orlando relative to LA. And because there's so much competition on those flights to LA, that's why you see a record low fare of something like $239 round trip.
All right. Next question is from Lindsay.
By the way, shout out. If anybody has already put in a pre-order for Take More Vacations, let me know in the comment section. I want to give you a shout out. Look, it's coming out in May. The publisher is on my butt to get those pre-orders up. I want to hear out from anybody who's already put in their pre-order and give you a very special personal shout out. So let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Lindsay asks, what have you heard about how medevac would be handled if you get COVID abroad?
This is a great question, and something that I wouldn't say is I have a ton of inside knowledge about.
Right.
The thing that I would recommend looking into, though, is because it can be very expensive, especially if you've got a serious case of COVID or any illness for that matter. It can be very expensive, especially, and your insurance likely will not cover you, generally speaking, for treatment outside the United States, assuming you're American. But one area where you might not realize you have some amount of coverage is through the credit card that you booked your flight with. Many credit cards have, as just a general perk, as long as you used it to pay for your flight, they'll say, we will reimburse you, say, up to like $10,000 or something for medevac in the case of illness or injury or something along those lines. So it's something that's worth looking up, seeing what benefits you might automatically and already have just by using your credit card to pay for that flight.
All right. I see Allison says, Scott, just pre-ordered.
Allison, you're the MVP, all right? I appreciate you so much. Thank you.
Next question we have here is from Liz. So Liz asks kind of an odd question, and I guess I don't really need to know, but just curious. I know. Is there any way to know how full flights are either prior to booking or after booking prior to departure?
Yes, there are, but generally they're not always obvious. So oftentimes, if you like the simplest answer is you can buy access to things like Expert Flyer or these other online tools that will literally show you what's called the inventory, like how many unsold seats there are. And especially it'll show you it by cabin. So, how many there are in economy or premium economy or business or first class. And for a lot of people use this because maybe they have elite status and are hoping to get upgraded, and they might go for the flight that has, 90% of the seats in business class are unsold right now. And so they have a much higher chance of getting upgraded than if they buy a different flight where only 20% of the seats are unsold. You don't necessarily need to go and buy a subscription to Expert Flyer, though, in order to get a sense of this. The easiest way oftentimes to get something of a sense is to look at the seat map when you are at booking. It's not a perfect it doesn't give you a perfect sense of things because, a lot of people might be booking basic economy tickets where you're not necessarily getting a pre-assigned seat. And the other thing, but it'll give you a sense, does this look like a pretty full flight if there are basically no seats that you can choose from, or does it seem pretty empty if basically the entire seat map is wide open? So that's a good, general heuristic. The other way to check is oftentimes on the airline specific website. So, say you're looking at a United flight, if you're on united.com and you just kind of do what's called a dummy booking, you find the flight you want and you start to go through the process. Obviously, you don't put in your credit card or actually buy it, but you start to go through the process. Oftentimes they'll tell you, oh, there's, only 5 tickets left. Something like that. The problem with this and why I think you should take this information with a grain of salt is twofold. One is that oftentimes that information is, how should we say, a lie. It is a marketing trick or tactic that they'll often use to, create a sense of scarcity or urgency. Oh my God, there's only 1 seat left. Buy it right now. So, I would be skeptical of those. The second thing to be aware of is oftentimes they'll only say only 3 tickets left at this price. And so that doesn't mean there's only 3 seats left on the plane. What that means is that there might only be 3 seats left in that specific fare bucket at this specific time. That could change tomorrow. That could change tonight. Like it could change in an hour. So oftentimes it's not something that's like easily accessible to the public to see exactly how many seats there are left. But if you do really want to find that information, Expert Flyer is usually the best way to go.
All right. A question. This is kind of a multi-part question. This is an interesting one. I think she uses 2 different accounts. So this is a question from Joyce, and she asks, may I have a response to my email? I'm assuming she already wrote in to our support. If you haven't, support@scotchyflights.com. So basically she says she bought a membership, and the next day we offered the 2-year and 5-year memberships. And then with her, I think with her account, she asks, essentially, I'd like to apply the 1 year purchase towards the extended years offer. This is Joyce following up on that first question, writing from the kid account. So I guess the two questions here is, one, best way for us to get a response back to her, and two, if we allow the 1 year purchase to the extended years offer.
Yes. Well, first of all, Joyce, Justice, thank you so much for signing up. We super appreciate having you as a member of Scott's Cheap Flights. Second, my apologies that we're taking a little bit longer to get back to you than we would like. I wish I had like a great excuse. Obviously, folks have been out for the holidays. There's been a lot, we had just had a holiday weekend and folks are catching up back on the inbox. I can tell you with certainty, this is a top priority right now for the support team to get back to every single email that we have in the support inbox. And so even though it's taking a little bit longer than we would like, I promise you, we're getting to it as soon as we can. And let me know on Twitter @ScottsFlights if we haven't gotten back to you, let's say by this time tomorrow. I'll make sure that we get back to you ASAP.
Yeah.
And otherwise, if you have questions about your accounts in general, that, can I get it changed? support@scottscheapflights.com. We are always eager and happy to chat and to be able to help you out however we can.
Yeah, perfect. Another question from YouTube comes from Cray Ray. Love that. How long until we get 300s to Europe? That's a good question.
I think it'll be a few months. $300 round trip to Europe is in my mind, that is the sort of pinnacle of this golden age of cheap flights that I think we've been living in since 2015. But we've had, it's funny, even during the pandemic, as airfare has gotten quite a bit cheaper, there's been a little bit of a bifurcation where it's gotten really cheap on a domestic front. But a lot of the international trips have actually gotten, in general, a bit more expensive than they used to be. To your point, we used to regularly, this time last year, we were every week finding $300 round trip flights to Europe. And now it's been, we still find them maybe once every couple of weeks, but usually only on maybe fewer routes, maybe just from New York or Boston. I would expect that those $300 round trip flights to Europe are going to come back once the sort of demand picks up and there's a clear sense of the timetable for when it's going to reopen. There's a little bit of a chicken and egg issue here. Will the timetable will demand only pick up after the timetable for reopening travel to Europe it gets announced, or will it pick up, after a critical mass of people have been vaccinated? Will pick up after, when will airlines start to add capacity on that route, just add more planes on that route? It's just a little bit, there's a little bit of it's just not clear right now which one is going to come first. But I would be surprised if we were to do, if we're chatting again 3 months from now and they haven't started to become more commonplace. Whether or not they're going to be available for this summer, I think is unlikely. And I think if you are thinking about traveling this summer, especially this summer like Europe, I think you would do yourself a favor to look about getting your flights arranged sooner rather than later. One of the pieces of advice in my advice email this past Monday, earlier this week, was that there are two things that are true today. A, you can't travel to Europe. And B, you probably haven't been vaccinated. But if you wait for those two things to no longer be true, chances are there's not going to be any cheap flights left. Even if there's not $300, you're not going to be able to get those $400 or $500 flights to Europe this summer, because by that time that happens, maybe April or May or whenever, everybody's going to be searching for flights. Everybody's going to be rushing to Kayak and Expedia and elsewhere to try to get their bookings happening, and you'll have missed the boat. And so instead, if you can front run that surge, if you can get your trip arranged before everybody else does, you have a much, much higher chance of being able to score some cheap flights. Plus, you have that flexibility, like we mentioned, to be able to change your dates if one of those two things doesn't happen before you are scheduled to take your trip. If the Europe reopening date doesn't happen by the time your trip is scheduled, or if you're not able to get vaccinated and don't want to go before then. So that's sort of my high level prediction of how things are going to look from a cheap flights to Europe standpoint. But certainly I think by this summer we're going to see a lot of those $300 to Europe flights return. It'll probably just be for travel beyond the summer, for travel in this fall, in the winter, and beyond that.
We have another comment. I think it's I'm unsure if this is a account name or a name. If it's a name, it's actually very cool. Parisian Tone says, Scott, just pre-ordered your book on Amazon. Thanks for all you've done and your hard work.
I appreciate you. Thank you so much. I really hope you're going to find it useful and enjoyable. I wanted to make it, this book take more. God, I'm so bad at doing reverse quoting. I wanted to make it something that's practical and usable and help folks not only be able to get cheap flights the way Julian does, the way I do, but also be able to use cheap flights to be able to take more vacations and see parts of the world they might not have thought they would be able to afford, or might not have thought they had the time to. One of the things that irks me so much is that this mismatch between how much people say they want to travel and how much people actually travel. And this book is what is kind of my best attempt at trying to bridge that gap and trying to help people be able to take those trips that we all say we want, but for one reason or another, I don't, the flights are too expensive, I don't have enough time, I don't have flexibility. This book addresses all that and helps try to make it possible to take those trips that you might have thought were, out of reach. So thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate anybody else who's put in that pre-order. Again, put your comment section in. Let me shout you out. I want to give my my humble thank you and gratitude.
Comment from Cinnamon Crystal Kelly. She says, hey, thank you for your wonderful email updates.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I was able to book an unexpected trip to Tokyo this upcoming September for me and my 16-year-old daughter for only a little over $700. Thanks to you.
Congratulations. Tokyo, I know, is at the top of so many people's lists when the pandemic starts to recede and folks get vaccinated. I know it's one of the places that I'm really excited to get to. And so congratulations. I think there is I would be completely shocked if travel to Tokyo is not available by September. So I'm excited for you, and I'm excited for you and your daughter's trip to Tokyo. I'm excited to take my daughter there one day too.
So just pretend that this transition was planned. But our next question is from D. Aline, and she asks, it's a glorious day. I booked for Tokyo in September. Do you think the borders are going to be open? There's talk that the Olympics may be postponed.
Ooh, man, congratulations. Like I said, I think there is a very, very high chance. One of the things to remember here is that tourism and travel, especially international travel, while it's a sort of it's an escape for you and I. It's literally a vacation, something we do for fun, and so it can feel kind of trivial in that way. By economist estimates, 1 in 10 jobs worldwide is supported by tourism. For so many people, this is their livelihood, being able to have tourists and travelers and visitors come in and see. And so it's not as though, reopening borders and reopening international travel is an afterthought for government officials and public health experts. They understand, this is something that is vital as soon as they feel like it's safe and possible to do it again. And so I wouldn't expect that it's going to take significantly long, that we're going to have been achieved herd immunity and that we're going to be good, and it'll still be like 6 or 12 months until international travel happens again. No. I think it's going to basically happen as soon as there is a legitimate light at the end of the tunnel.
I have seemed to lost my place. Oh, okay. Perfect. Next question is from Eva. Eva asks, how much should I expect to pay for a flight from Portland to Geneva, and how long should I wait to find a good price?
Great question. Portland, a place that's very near and dear to me. So Portland to Geneva, if you search that exact route, you're not going to see it on sale all that often, maybe a couple times a year, and hopefully down, around 500, 450 bucks round trip. But what I would recommend, especially if you're looking to, get flights locked in soon, and especially if you have specific dates you're looking to be there by, is start your search by looking for Portland to Geneva, but don't end your search there. Also keep an eye on flights from Portland to Zurich, Portland to Milan, Portland to Paris, Portland to Frankfurt, all these places within a relative stone's throw of Geneva, because once you get to Europe, it's incredibly easy to get to your final destination, either on a budget flight or train or bus, however you want to go. And so if it costs, $1,000 to fly from Portland to Geneva, but you can get a flight from Portland to Milan for $400, well, hell yeah, you save $600 just for the cost of getting from Milan to Geneva, which you can probably do for 50 or 75 bucks. Plus, if you do it this way, this is a little trick of basically building your own layovers. It's one of the tips that I detail in Take More Vacations. If you do it this way and you book that trip to Milan, then you can actually you can build two vacations into one. You can take a couple days in Milan, be able to explore, enjoy yourself before continuing on to Geneva. And so it's like you've added an extra city for free on your trip. I would not pay more than $600 for that, because unless you have, no flexibility whatsoever on dates, no flex, and it's coming up soon, and you're not willing to fly somewhere else nearby, only then would I be willing to pay more than, say, $600 round trip. I think this is something you should be able to easily get under $550 or under $500.
Cool. Scott, you have time for 2 to 3 more questions?
That's great. Let's do it.
All right. To start off, we have two comments first. One's from Trina. She says, "Hey Trina, I was able to book a flight from Hawaii to Scotland for a little over $700 round trip in October, thanks to your email as well. Hoping we can go."
Nice. Awesome. Congratulations. Well done.
And then Victoria, hey Victoria, she says, "I've started telling folks who say flights are too expensive to check y'all out, just because I've saved literally hundreds by booking through y'all's emails."
I gotta talk to those folks. Okay, it's oh man, it's like the greatest trick the devil ever played was convincing people that flights had to be expensive. It bugs me so much, because we all know, I know, Julian knows, probably most of you in the comment section know, that expensive flights are optional. You can get cheap flights and they are prolific. You just have to make them a priority.
Yeah. That's very true. And that's also one of Scott's pet peeves, is people telling him that flight prices and tickets are too expensive.
Don't gaslight me like that, okay?
Yeah. Question from Brian. Brian asks, "I want to travel to Europe end of June into July with my 11-year-old. Since they don't give vaccines to kids under 16 years old, how would that work for me taking a summer trip with her?"
Oh, great question. I don't think we have, this is one where I don't think we have an answer to it yet. They're working right now at creating the sort of vaccine passport system that I think will likely be required for travel to many places that are currently off limits for Americans, like Europe. But I don't think that those sorts of edge case decisions have been decided yet. For instance, your case where you've got a family member who's not eligible to get a vaccine. What I suspect will happen, and what I suspect will be the best case scenario for your situation, is that when places require a vaccine passport, they will also make it say you can show proof of vaccination, or you can show proof of a negative test within the past, say, 72 hours. And so, while you might be vaccinated, you might have to get a COVID test for your 11-year-old, and then be able to take that negative COVID test to show, in order to be able to get him or her into the continent.
Cool. Two more questions, Scott. Question from Luis. Luis asks, "Hello, experts. What is your opinion of TAP Portugal? I personally have actually never flown TAP Portugal, but I have I know, a good amount of friends and coworkers who have, and I've, heard no complaints, have only really heard good things about it. How about you, Scott?
I've flown them. It's a totally fine experience. I had a little bit of a beef with them early in the pandemic when they really dragged their heels on providing the legally owed refunds to people whose flights they canceled. That rubbed me the wrong way. I know that rubbed a lot of travelers the wrong way. And so, listen, one of my life goals is to not hold on to grudges for forever. And so I'm trying to practice that, put that into practice here. But it did bother me. And I would have liked to see them handle that better. I think they've improved quite a bit since then. And I think, to the extent now that they are flying most of their flights and will be in the future, it probably will be a non-issue. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that for all the people I know who have struggled to get the refund that they were owed from TAP Portugal. One of the pieces of advice, they oftentimes have some of the cheapest fares across the Atlantic, whether you're going to Portugal, Spain, Northern Africa, but they also they were one of the original airlines that did the sort of basic economy model for these transatlantic routes. And one of the things to know about how they price it is it's typically quite a bit cheaper if you basically book one class up on TAP Portugal. So rather than going the barest bones of bare economy, I think if you book the one class up that's called like discount economy or something, it will include a bag. It'll include, a couple other things that if you paid a la carte for, it might cost, 90, 100, 150 bucks. But if you just upgrade to the next class up, it's only like 30 bucks or 40 bucks. It depends somewhat on the flight, on your specific flight. But usually I'm a little bit wary of, going, like upgrading from basic economy to regular economy or stuff like that. In this case, it's usually a good deal if you need, if you plan you're going to need a check bag or anything like that.
All right. So before our last question, I'm going to try to sneak in two more comments / questions. I'm just trying to give the people more Scott time. That's my goal here. So one of the comments is from Victoria again, and she says, one of my best friends just signed up for premium and her Belgian boyfriend did too. Y'all are helping keep love alive by making long distance a little more affordable for them.
I appreciate you so much, Victoria. And listen, as somebody who was in a long distance relationship and cheap flights helped keep that possible, helped keep that from dissolving as so many long distance relationships do, I firsthand have knowledge of how important airfare is for some very real life situations, for being able to keep many of those relationships that we hold dear in our lives possible.
Yeah. And then mini question before our last question. YouTube comment asks, Scott, how long has your book been out? I was trying to find it at our library. And how do you spell your last name? I can't make it out.
The book comes, Take More Vacations, comes out on May 11th. It's available for pre-order today, including audiobook for anybody who, just doesn't get enough of this voice in our 30-minute Facebook Lives and really wants to get hours and hours of it. You'll be able to get that. It comes out May 11th, and my last name is spelled Keyes. It's like eyes with a K in front of it.
There you go. It is not Keys. That's the real takeaway here. It is not Scott Keys.
Not many people know that. I do not mind at all. I take no offense if you prefer to call me Scott Keys, I'll allow it.
All right. So final question comes from Karen. And Karen asks, came in late, hope this isn't a repeat. It's not. She asked, how many times will an airline allow waived date changes?
Good question. Some airlines will say, you can only waive it once. Some airlines will allow you to do it as many times as you want. The key to know here is that while you don't have to pay any penalty to do so, a year ago, if you wanted to change your flights, you had to pay a $200 penalty if it was domestic, often like $400 or $500 penalty if you're flying internationally, plus any fare difference. So while the penalty is gone, you still are responsible for the fare difference. But here's the upshot. If the new flight that you change to is more expensive than your original flight, then yes, you have to pay for that difference. But on most airlines, with the big exception of United, on most airlines, if your new flight is cheaper than your original flight, you actually get the difference back in the form of credit. And so especially, let's say you book a flight for this summer, even in a bizarre year and a bizarre time like we're living in now, summer is typically always the most expensive time of year to travel because it's nice out, the weather's great, people aren't, kids aren't in school, families able to travel, teachers out, all those reasons. And so flights tend to be more expensive. So let's say you book a flight for July now and you get it for $600 round trip to Paris. If you push that, if you decide you don't want to go by then or something, whatever, if you push that flight back to September, the likelihood that the flights in September to Paris would be more expensive than flights to Paris in July, very, very low. In fact, chances are, you'll be able to get it in September for more like $400 or even less. And so you might actually be able to get it a lot cheaper by pushing the dates further back and hopefully be able to get that difference back in travel credit.
Yeah, cool. Thanks so much, Scott.
All right. Well, thank you all for these great questions. Man, we appreciate you all so much. Thank you for everybody who's been pre-ordering the book. I cannot tell you how much it means to me. Listen, even though I do this every week, and even though I run a company called Scott's Cheap Flights, it's totally unnatural for me to sell things, and it feels uncomfortable. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't truly believe not only in the power of cheap flights, but the power of the ideas that have helped folks like myself, helped folks like Julian, and helped so many of you, Victoria, Alice, and other folks in the comment section be able to travel more and see more of the world and frankly live more than you might have been able to without those sorts of cheap flights. And so this is why I believe in it so much. This is why we're so grateful to you as members, and this is why I'd be grateful for anybody who is interested in being able to travel more to pre-order the book today, because you can pre-order it now. It really sends a strong signal to the publishers and helps kind of get it more outreach, more just sort of weight than it would otherwise. So I appreciate you all. Thank you all so much. Thank you to Julian for hosting here, and we'll be back hopefully this time next week. All right, everybody. Great job.